You're listening to the Microsoft Innovation Podcast, where we explore the intersection of people, business, and technology. This year, we're adding a new show to our lineup, The AI Advantage, to help you learn the skills you need to thrive in the AI era.
Welcome to the Copilot Show, where I interview Microsoft staff innovating with AI. I hope you will find this podcast educational and inspire you to do more with this great technology. Now, let's get on with the show. Welcome back to the Microsoft Innovation Podcast. Today we're heading to Seattle to meet someone who's quietly transforming how 8,000 plus employees inside Microsoft are embracing AI from the inside out. She's the lead of Customer Zero, as we call it, in Copilot. Cadie, welcome to the show. It's good to have you on. And as always, in the show notes will be any links around any resource that we discuss. But with that, welcome.
Thanks so much. I'm happy to be here.
Good to have you on. I was so excited when I came across your name and someone referred and said, listen, this person actually was Customer Zero rollout and has massively impacted how adoption of M365 Copilot has happened. And because, I've been writing a book on the same subject, I was like, I must talk to Cadie.
Perfect. Amazing. That's so nice. It's so nice to hear that somebody thought of me too. That's amazing.
Yeah. So good. Food, family, and fun. What do they mean to you? What do you do when you're not on the clock with Microsoft?
Yeah. I am extremely close with my entire family. I live within 2 blocks of every single one of them. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. And yeah, my twin sister lives literally 2 streets up from me. And then, so my family and I are very, very close. And I have a daughter who's going to be 3 in September. Nice. And she is just wild and a blast. And then I like all foods. I like all foods. And then for fun, I do a lot of crafty things. I have an Etsy shop where I make custom merchandise, swag things,
This is so cool.
It's just, it's fun. It's a little creative outlet. And then I am not a runner historically, but before my next birthday, I'm going to try to do 2 half marathons. So we're getting a little bit more into running. And then lately, just as looking for something that's more quiet time for me and soothing, I've gotten into kind of gaming for comfort. So Disney Dreamlight Valley is my go-to comfort game right now. So every night I'll play that for an hour before I go to bed. And
that's so cool.
Yeah. So when we're not doing work and champ stuff, it's next family and then kind of all the little hobbies to try to keep busy.
Wow. My son turns 3 in September as well.
Oh my gosh.
Very similar age.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy coincidence.
Yeah.
That got my interest. Tell me, Customer Zero with Microsoft and the rollout of M365 Copilot, obviously ahead of the curve of the rest of the world. And what do they say? Copilot's, the version that we have has been around, I think, 2 years now, or coming up 2 years. So it's not like a long time. 8,000 users, a heck of a lot of folks, that's part of your champions network. Yeah. How did the job end up on your plate to start with?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I actually have kind of an interesting role at Microsoft. I think my title is technically, right now, it's a senior business program manager, but my role in particular focuses on employee readiness. And historically, over time, my job is not at all the original job that I was hired for. I think when I was originally hired, we were still doing stuff on Azure deployment or things like that. And so we did a lot of readiness, meeting our employees where they are. That's kind of always our goal. And at that time, we were doing live facilitated trainings in person. And they probably did that for 6 months when I was enrolled before we had lockdown. And so then my job was quickly switched to entirely hybrid. Or no, first it was entirely virtual. So we went to creating videos. And thankfully, I have a background in film. My major is marketing and film. And so making videos all day long when we were in lockdown was a blast. And I was at the time assigned to Viva. So I think I made 35 videos showing people how to use Viva topics alone. And so we did that with Viva, and that was great. It was a really cool new experience, how people learn virtually. And then in the middle of that, I got pregnant, went on maternity leave, thought I was going to come back to, 5,000 views on my Viva Topics video. And I came back and there was like 5. And I was like, something's not working here. We can't keep making videos and not having, because it's not that they're not helpful or that people don't need to learn the stuff. It was that they, especially in Microsoft, so massive and there's so many resources out there. And it's just, things don't have the ability to scale the way that's most effective in a virtual environment. And so this is such a roundabout way of getting to your answer, but we learned a lot during that phase. And I was so jaded coming back from maternity leave, kind of coming to grips with that. And so they were like, okay, Cadie, we want you to come on to this new thing and help with the readiness for Copilot. And we want you to do exactly what you did for Viva. And I was just like, there's absolutely no way I'm doing that. It's a waste of time. We don't need videos. And so they were like, well, we need you to work on it. So figure it out. And I have the best manager and managers in Microsoft. Microsoft Digital's best team, where they will say, if you don't think something's right or you think we can do something differently, go ahead and try it. And I was so lucky that they took a chance on me trying something different. And basically, that's how I came to run the Copilot Champs community, was, identifying this issue, this way that we're doing things isn't working. Let's try something different. And I basically took the same concepts that we use in digital marketing and how digital marketing was working during lockdown and during a more virtual or hybrid world, take those same components and apply them to our business. So that's how we came up with the concept for the Copilot Champs community. It's a lot of what we do is built on the basis and same structure as a digital marketing campaign. So yeah, because I kind of took the chance and started it, I've just kind of been the one person to keep maintaining it and running it this whole time. So yeah, I think that's kind of the genesis of Copilot Champs.
So what's the secret sauce? How do you apply those lessons learned from the marketing side? If I said, listen, build me the ultimate champs community now for Copilot, let's say a customer outside of Microsoft, so you don't have the nuance of being your own tools in-house. And what are kind of, when you think of those building blocks, what should be put in place?
Yeah, so it's interesting. And we'll get back to kind of the role that Customer Zero plays in this. But what's great with a program like Microsoft does with Customer Zero is there's a lot of room for experimentation. But when you're getting to the concept of like what elements in a digital marketing campaign translate to internal enterprise readiness or adoption strategies, it's probably, it's something that I haven't really experienced in my corporate roles. And that is this concept of having like true stories. I think that the younger generations, like Gen Z, is really good at calling this out. Like they're really good at noticing when somebody's forcing an idea onto them or being like disgenuine. They're really quick to call out if you're reading off a script or if you're, studying from your heart. And I think that's something that translates when people are, really influenced, like through social media influencers, right? Those are the people who, marketing's known this for a long time. If you want to make something go viral or really have success, you're going to meet your audience, a tailored audience through, the different algorithms that social media puts you through. And you're meeting your targeted specific audience where they are. And so it's really hard to imagine that that's something that could translate in a corporate environment, especially someplace like Microsoft, where we have a gazillion different roles in a different like organizations and no two people really have the same job. It's kind of hard to imagine that you can find that common ground with people, but that's what we've done. And that's like everything that we do that's experimental, that has a human first and grassroots feeling to it, is by far the most effective. And I think that's also when you see something that's just like you can't take your eyes off of it in social media, that's kind of like the underlying, meaning behind it. I won't go on a rant about it now, but we could have an entire hour or two long conversation about my obsession with gamification and Octalysis also. And I think the combination of the two things, like social media marketing, digital marketing concepts and gamification, are kind of the main ingredients to the secret sauce of Copilot Champs.
Interesting. This is interesting. I want to unpack this a bit more. So are you saying that you, rather than creating, let's say traditionally in my training career, we would have done a 1 week class. That's how I started out, was a 1 week, 6 hours a day, intense training on a piece of technology.
Yes.
When I was in Sun Microsystems, it would go to a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks type course where you'd come in. Nobody's got time for that these days. And so, when we look at it from a TikTok perspective, we're looking 30 to 60 to, let's say, 90 seconds. I think 4 minutes max, right? You've got to either communicate a concept, move on, but really open with a compelling hook. Why will I stay in that first kind of 10 to 15 seconds? Otherwise, I'm off to something else. And of course, in the corporate environment, what we're seeing is this massive bombardment of, you got to learn so much. There's so much more to learn. How do I filter out and learn the stuff that's going to move the dial for me personally, rather than all the prescribed learning that, an organization the size of Microsoft has probably millions of hours of content that people could consume.
Yes. And the key word that you use there is prescribed learning. And I think what we've come to accept is that for Copilot in particular, and we'll say AI and we'll just say new technologies going forward, that in our experience so far, peer influence scales faster than policy. And you're entirely right, where something that a prescribed training, its work, and I think there's something subconscious about that too, where it's like, I'm just going to get through this hour-long training so that I get my credit, so that I don't get a nasty gram in a week, right? And when it's peer run, there's that, intrinsic, like community style, like influencer element of it that's kind of like enticing. And then it is that personalization and tailored content with real stories that makes something feel because it makes something feel real. When you are going through a lot of kind of typical trainings, it's learn this out of the book because we told you to. And the way that peer training is modeled, particularly the way we do it, is look what I did and listen to the value that I feel from this product or this tool, or whatever the topic is that we're training on. We're not necessarily training, we're storytelling. And you can take what you want from that story. What we see a lot is people will hear these stories and be like, how did you do that? Show me how you did that and how I can make it relevant in my workflows, because you basically sold me on a story. You sold me on a feeling, something that is, a gut instinct, something that's human. And so like the tombstone of Copilot Champs community is going to say human first AI adoption. And that's like the main thing that's kind of like through what works with social media and digital marketing, and what works with enterprises is if you're kind of got this human first, feeling first approach, it's just, we're seeing that it has an impact in the way that people take interest in scale adoption, have more open-mindedness to try something new and to share it with their friends, right? Or like one of the things we saw when Copilot first came out was we had an entire group of employees in certain roles who tried Copilot, the first few months, the first year, when it was still like very, very infant, who tried it and they were like, this isn't what I expected. This isn't AI. I don't want to try this anymore. I'm done. And we've seen over time that the only effective way to get that person to try it again is if a peer shows them that value. So I tried Copilot. It didn't do what I thought it would. I hate it. I'm never trying it again. 2 days later, months later, Mark's using Copilot and he's showing me how he's using it. It's improving, something in his workflow. And I, trust and respect him. And I want to, I'll try something because he did it. So I guess I'll give it another shot. That's the one way we've seen to really not only pull somebody back into a product that maybe they've been disenchanted with, but convert them to be a champ. Because we have groups and groups of people who came from particularly technical roles who I've kind of taken an extra interest in them to help nurture them through this, but they end up being the strongest champs at the end of the day because they've been on both sides of like like drinking the Kool-Aid to a degree, right? Especially with an internal program. There's like a little bit of optimism we try to have. But I mean, they end up having like, once it clicks for them and they find the purpose for it, they're so excited to go share that story with their peers. So it's something that works, in enterprises, in work environments, and in, all kinds of digital marketing and social media.
So if I'm sitting in the role of somebody in traditional L&D type role in an organization and they hear, hey, you're just going to let other people educate the people and we're going to have no formal program, they're going to go, hang on a moment, how do we measure, one, how do we know people are learning things they need to know? And how do we measure this? Those are kind of the, from somebody that wants to have 50 people got to 20% of the course, 100 got to the blah. This is a different way of looking at it. So how did you kind of make sure you had a mechanism to show advancement, to show adoption was happening? And then how did you enable these mavens, these champs, these, champions of early adoption? How did you equip them and enable them to do their storytelling, to bring people into that journey?
Totally. It's a great question. There's a few things in there. One is, yes, my team generally does L&D, and we do have metrics that we need to measure in success, KPIs that are based on the material that we produce in the first place. And so the Champs model is kind of, you think of like a hub and spoke model, and you think of like my team in employee experience success is still going to create videos, GIFs, training decks based on our amazing relationships with the product group and customer experience groups and things like that. We have like all of these great relationships where we can build really rich content. And I'm just going to brag about my team for a second. I'm one of 3 of these Readiness BPM's content creators. And I would challenge anybody to throw any kind of topic at them, and they'll create totally top of the line training material, and very quickly too. They're a really, really talented group of people. So there's no taking away from the content that's being created at a baseline. So what we've done with that hub and spoke model is traditionally we use BPMs to help scale our trainings across the company. So a BPM will be assigned to different organizations and kind of like work with that chief of staff to make sure like you get the latest, training decks and stuff.
What does BPM stand for?
Business program managers.
Gotcha. Yep,
yeah.
Okay.
So just like partner with different orgs. And they also do amazing work, and they're super crucial to our champs community as well, to kind of like maintain those relationships, make sure that like something that a champ makes helps kind of scale that through that ecosystem as well. So by the way, if you go to the Inside Track blog, the Microsoft Inside Track blog, and you search for Copilot Champs, you can find our Copilot Champs community framework. And that's where we have some slides that go through exactly what I'm talking about. So if you're like me, and I'm so visual, if you're talking to me and I can't visualize it, I'm going to forget it in a second. So if you're like me, go grab that slide to understand our hub and spoke model. So yeah, that's kind of our 2-layer traditional model. And then for Copilot, we added this outer layer, which is our champs community. So for Copilot Champs, by the way, is 8,000 employees, totally voluntary, almost every role represented across the company, including vendors, and every organization across the company, every country. It's a global program. And anybody can sign up to do it. The only requirements that we have are that you are passionate about AI, that you're the kind of person that wants to drive adoption in your team. And the other rule that we have you kind of sign at the end is that you're going to be nice about it, that you're not a jerk. That's the only way I would ever kick somebody out of the program.
I love it.
But when you sign up, we, like I said, gamification is big for us too. So we have like little badges and photo wrappers that people earn from completing some of these baseline trainings. So you sign up, you automatically get an email from me that's kind of like personalized and has this list of trainings for you to take so you can earn your champs badge. And in that training is included in like getting you up to a certain degree of kind of competency with Copilot as a product, and then 2 or 3 train the trainer sessions. So you learn from David Van Gilder, my peer, directly from him how he would train on Copilot. And so then the materials we give them are, decks with screenshots or a script to do a live demo if they want. But even if you're not that familiar with it and you're not comfortable, you can totally use the screenshots he provides and a very detailed talk track. So anybody day one could use this out of the box solution to demonstrate Copilot to their teams. So that's how we quickly and I think effectively enable like many L&D teams across the company with the same content.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like we built this program around that. So yeah, again, we could talk for hours about like how that works at scale because I am one person that runs it. And we have this kind of rich onboarding experience. And it's, we use Power Automate, we use forms, we use M365 groups. There's all kind of like little tricks that you can do to make things a lot easier and more efficient, and also like a really rich experience that feels personal with, also no budget, like one person and no budget, and we can still have an experience that feels, really complete. While it is very grassroots, but we never have anybody say like, oh, this is sloppy or this is boring or anything like that. We have a very dynamic program.
So you talk about gamification and badges and things like that. One of the things that I've noticed from implementations being done around the world of Copilot, one of the big things, the word swag keeps coming up, which I find consistently. People love swag, and particularly, Copilot logo is pretty awesome. It looks pretty amazing. It wears well. Is swag part of your arsenal there, or is it more like just digital swag, or is there any kind of physical outworking of that you find drives or moves the needle at all?
Yeah. So again, we don't have any budget. So I do have some elements of physical swag that I pay for out of pocket. But I think that that's like, it's not reasonable for everybody. But for me, I have like so much appreciation for, it's only for people that, go out of their way to be helpful, what we call superstars in the Champs community. Everybody that presented in our last big training event that was company wide, I gifted them a piece of like a custom swag, like a sweatshirt or a backpack.
Nice.
And last year, our big thing was friendship bracelets for the Champs community.
Very Taylor Swift.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So last year, that was kind of the thing. But yes, there are things that like that feel very special, but it's not kind of our standard. The standard definitely is Credly badges, which is fantastic because that'll scale beyond your Microsoft experience.
Exactly.
And we really love to celebrate different kinds of wins with that. And then we have internal like badges or internal like digital tokens too. I love using generative AI to create images, and I'm pretty good at Photoshop. So we have all kinds of like photo wrappers and backgrounds and Teams backgrounds and things that custom made for the Copilot Champs community. So yeah. And then also this year, I think Microsoft's making a blatant effort to reduce, carbon emissions. And part of that is through reducing the amount of like physical swag that Microsoft employees use internally, which, I was already not doing it because my team just doesn't have, that's not something we normally do because we're usually not on that side of the fence. But I think we'll start to see more people come up with other ways to be creative with gamification. And so, yeah, the end prize tends to be a digital badge, if not like a one-off piece of swag. And then it's an interesting concept. Like we're building out an app game right now that'll be internal to start. Hopefully we can publish it externally. That's kind of running under the same concept as like a Duolingo, where you make progress, you complete challenges, and then your gratification is coming from watching yourself earn points and climb up that leaderboard. And we're developing this in a way where it's very important at Microsoft Digital in particular that we really respect our users' privacy and Works Council policies. So we don't automatically track your individual Copilot usage. But in this game, you can write, a personal attestation to that usage and provide feedback. And you get points that way. You get points for watching some of our training courses and upskilling yourself in Copilot. And so there will be like lots of little challenges for you to earn points and get that gratification of that leaderboard. So there are even things that don't result in a prize that can still incentivize people to participate.
Nice. I know exactly what you mean. When I was in the Power Platform space, I built a tool that was around organizational enablement on the Power Platform, and I stole the concept from Duolingo that when you leveled up, around your picture was a band with and you could choose any number of bands that you had earned. And then we had this concept of XP, so experience. You could always see your experience line, which is taken straight out of, gaming. And, if you delivered a small group of, enablement, you would get XP. If people attended it, they would get a certain amount of XP. And so the whole thing, then there was a whole leaderboard and people were, wanting to do more, want to earn more points. And of course, you kind of kept it dark around what earned the bigger points, but it was incredible. And it's all opt-in, right? And we weren't tracking anything outside of attendees to a registered class and things like that. But it was very cool. And it was all opt-in, but it was people love, for whatever reason, little gaming. It does have impact. Just on your video side of things, are you going to much more short form video when you do those fundamental learning pieces? And just a bit of, it's not necessarily technical, but tell me a bit about tool sets. Are you using things like Clipchamp, or are you using the Adobe suite to create your e-learning content? Are you going as far as making it SCORM compliant, or are you don't have time for that? It seems like SCORM's a very old school way of doing things. And is it a case of just making it bite-sized and consumable, right? Everyone's busy, but you might, be on a commute and you can watch a couple of videos and you want to get the whole concept without being stopped halfway through and then, I never get back to it type thing.
Yeah.
How are you thinking about that?
Yeah. So I think you're totally right. And I think that before Copilot, again, because my background is in film. So like I could sit at a using like the entire Adobe suite and make something like super polished and amazing. And again, we get like 5 views on it. And with the rate of change with Copilot, there was a period where we would get really frustrated in taking the traditional amount of time that we would on production, because the turnover was so fast. We would create something one day and it would be different and out of date, like immediately. So we kind of had to come to grips with that reality and say, things don't need to be super polished. And in fact, with what we're seeing with like Copilot Champs and things like that, the more grassroots or like less polished something is, as long as it's still clear, is, more effective. So what I do with the Champs community in particular, because what my peers have been doing with Copilot creation, I would say follows like very simple, like instead of doing a 3-hour training video on how to use Copilot to summarize your inbox, which is like 2 clicks. A lot of things like that, we create GIFs instead. And then for what I do with Champs content is monthly we meet as a group and we have people share their wins, best practices, and demos with Copilot. And we record those, and I will first, you're going to know exactly what we're going with here because you do this kind of like podcast and you're doing some self-promotion and social media, is the longest form of content, you have it. And then you have like that hour-long video, right? You have that hour's worth of content. Imagine then we cut it into 15-minute segments. And if somebody wants a 15-minute, deep dive on something, they can have it. We cut it in half from there. And then we cut it into the little bite-sized things, maybe a couple seconds or whatever. And that's what we'll post on Viva Engage or something like that, or have a clip of it like, embedded in an email or a newsletter to get somebody to go to the other video. Kind of like you see with YouTube where you have an hour-long podcast and then you have 5 seconds of shorts and people, you can still get a lot of information from a short. Yes. So that's kind of the strategy that I've used with the content that we get from Champs. And so with Champs, we have a landing page, we have a Viva Engage channel, we have a Teams channel, and we just kind of cut up and stretch every piece of content that we have and scale it. So that's kind of the way that we do it. So I have been using Clipchamp, and I think when Clipchamp first came out, I was kind of like snobby and thought like, I'm not, we're going to use Adobe Suite, come on. And now, because it is just like, especially like the in-window editing you can do like in stream without even opening the platform. It's like, I just have to trim here and there. It's fine. Yeah, somebody's microphone died in the middle of it, but they come back in a couple seconds. Like there's things that I would have never let go from an editing perspective in the past, but it works now and we can do things so much faster. I do still gonna make some fun, like original content because I make like fun, like parody promotional videos, like silly commercial type things. And for those, you will see me, crack open Adobe, but then also use programs like 11 Labs and Midjourney, other things that aren't necessarily in the Copilot suite. where there's text to voice and things like that.
Yes.
Because we can. And,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I hated the most about making training videos was doing voiceovers. And now I don't have to worry about that. So yeah, it's been really cool. That's been a different side of AI adoption tools, because I think most of my AI stuff that I use is in that enterprise work environment, and getting into the play side of things, or whatever, creative side of things, is very cool too.
This has been so interesting. Incredibly so. This tool that we use in Riverside, after the export, as in once it's compiled, it allows me to create, and it's using AI to identify all the magic clips, or what they call magic clips, which can be, anything from 30 or even from 10 seconds through to 90 seconds or 120 seconds long. And it verticalizes it. It does the, imprint of the closed captions or open captions across them. And it is what hooks people in, right? Those social media bite-sized pieces. So interesting to hear you talk about that. Before I let you go, what's the advice after all this experience that you would have to a brand new company? They've just gone out.
Yeah.
They've bought $5,000, $30 a month per person, a Copilot, M365 Copilot licenses, and they have allocated somebody to do adoption inside the organization. What quick-fire advice would you give those folks?
Yeah, so I have customer engagements a lot where we answer this exact question. And the challenge that people come up with is we don't have the capacity, the headcount, the budget, maybe even enough people who are interested enough in Copilot to learn about it and then train on it. And so they really love when I come to them and say, like, I've built this program by myself, and up until recently where I got one or two people to help me, I did the entire program with 8,000 people by myself. It's my side of desk job, and customers love to hear that. And we do it basically for free. And we do have these kits online. Camp Copilot in a Box is one of them. And so if I had a customer, come and say, sure, your Champs program concept sounds great. We don't have champs. We don't have people who will be willing to learn this with us, or somebody who's maybe like already interested in AI. Even we don't know how to identify those people. Then I would start with the Camp Copilot in a Box, because what we have in there is a virtual skilling framework, which sounds like, okay, anybody can host a virtual skilling event, but we really break it down step by step with the concepts and like best practices that have worked for us in Microsoft. And then we provide you some of those really cool train the trainer decks that I talked about that have the screenshots, they have the complete talk track. And, I think for Camp Copilot and Copilot Expo, some of these bigger internal training things we've done, there's 30 and now 80 sessions in them. And for Camp Copilot, we trimmed it down to what are the 3 things that you need to know to get started on your Copilot journey? Like, how do you kickstart that? So we have a Copilot Kickstarter, just like tell you kind of the ins and outs of how Gen AI works and Copilot's model. My favorite one of all time is the art of prompt engineering, which is a really cool exercise where you learn like the parameters of prompting, iterative prompting through Copilot and Designer. So you're making different versions of a picture of a Pomeranian the whole time. And it's just a blast. And then by the end of that, in just these 3 courses, the last one is make it real. So that last one is how to apply Copilot in your daily workflows. The next version of this will be how to apply Copilot in your daily workflows with agents. Last year when we published it, agents wasn't, the priority. It was more things like things that people do every day with their inbox and Teams meeting generations and stuff, which is amazing. The next version will be all about agents, like a couch to 5K beginner to builder journey with agents. Anyway, so we are putting information and kits like that out for our customers over time. And it's all stuff that started with the Champs community. And then we package it up and deliver it so that if your Champs community or your adoption enablement effort is lacking just that human element isn't there yet, you can kickstart that. If you're a one-person IT department, you have the tools that you need to try it. And then again, to take our advice in the deck and infuse it with your personal stories, you're bound to attract more people and build that community out over time. So we have a few kits like that to kind of help cultivate that in a smaller company.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 guy. Is there a guest you would like to see on the show from Microsoft? Please message me on LinkedIn and I'll see what I can do. Final question for you. How will you create with Copilot today? Ka kite.
Are you ready to accelerate your career in the Microsoft ecosystem? The 90-Day Mentoring Challenge, created by Mark Smith, is your opportunity to create a personalized pathway to success. Join over 1,200 alumni from more than 70 countries who have achieved remarkable results, from promotions to new job opportunities. Take it from Nathan, who said, "Since completing the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge, I've become an MVP in business applications and doubled my income." Or from Parves, who shares, "I've never felt as inspired or energized about my career as I do now." Sign up at arcor.nz365guide.com. You can find the link in the show notes. And if you use the code podcast, you'll get 10% off.